Hey, Queens, and welcome to Queens Around the Country, our show from my house to yours, where we're visiting some of our favorite queens in quarantine, seeing how they're doing, how they're holding up, how they're slaying it at home, and of course, what they think of this season of RuPaul's Drag Race. Today, we are taking a virtual trip to New York City to visit a drag icon and lip sync assassin. This Broadway queen needs no introduction, but I just gave her one. Please give my sis, the glamorous, the gorgeous Peppermint, a big Queens Around the Country welcome. Hey, Pep.
Hey, Jonny.
Qween, how are you doing?
I'm doing all right here in New York City. I've always wanted to have my very own daytime talk sort of backdrop.
Yes. Good day, New York. Here we are. Peppermint, New York City is like the epicenter of the virus. How is it? Is it scary? Where are you holding up? Tell me how you're doing.
I'm doing all right. It is a little crazy. It's really tough to kind of gauge what's happening in New York versus just what's happening in life right now, because everything's on shutdown. I mean, this is happening in the whole planet, right? But in New York, it is, the news is one thing, but then just being here in New York City, it's really encouraging to hear folks giving a round of applause every night at 7:00 to the frontline workers and healthcare workers and the first responders. It might feel kind of corny if somebody told me that story, but being able to experience it, it feels like, oh, I want to participate in this. And it just feels like that vibration that New York City has, because of all the people that are so close around you. It really, it's really apparent at those times. And for the most part, people are, just following what they got to do. Now that's now. 6 months down the line, I don't know what's going to happen, honey. We might be looting and robbing, and I might be going next door and juke my neighbor and steal her bread. I
don't know. Are you by yourself at home?
I'm quarantined at home. Cheers. Alone in New York City, in my apartment. I always felt like it was a big enough apartment, but during this quarantine, I feel like it might as well just be a small padded room.
Right. Now, the quarantine really got in the way of some big plans that you were having. You had just kicked off the Nubia tour with you, Shay, BB, Bob. Who else was on that?
Monique Hart. And then we had some other special guests. Of course, we had the Vixen in our New York City kickoff. And then Latrice Royale was signed on to be in our next date, which was, we were doing 2 anchor dates, so New York and then LA, and then kind of everything in between. And so the goal, or the sort of approach, is to mix in as many queens as possible. But we can't have everybody out at the same time. But those were the initial queens, and we were so excited and so stoked. We were even having meetings. We still have meetings, but we were even having meetings during the country figuring out what was happening with Corona. We were ready to go full stream ahead, but then obviously for everyone's safety, we decided to cancel Nubia just as even Los Angeles was implementing its shutdown.
Right. But obviously when things go back to normal, the queens of color are going to join together like the Super Friends and slay the house down.
We back and we black, honey.
What was the dressing room feeling like on that opening night? Because it's a big deal, not to just be part of someone else's tour, but for you guys to make your own tour. What was that opening night energy?
The energy was fantastic. I mean, like you said, I guess opening night was one particular thing. It's always nerve-wracking on opening night. We had weeks of 2 weeks of rehearsal, together. But everybody had kind of been rehearsing on their own and planning sort of their own, what they were going to do, their own zhuzh outside at home. And then we all brought it together. And it was a little crunchy at first to, try to have it come together. But then eventually, it was like a well-oiled machine. It was fantastic. It was, it just felt really good to be a part of a great show, that you feel like this is a great show that we're performing. And I would be happy to be a part of a great show with anybody. But then knowing that I'm with these queens of color, my sisters, who have, in different ways, haven't always been able to really fully express what they wanted to artistically as a queen of color, you know, to celebrate their Blackness at the same time as their queerness, and just have that all take place. It was epic, and it was emotional. And so that first night, opening night, was a little nerve-wracking. The second night was like more of a celebration, and like, we got this. And it was funny. Even Miss Corona was making a little cameo there. Not, I mean, statistically, someone was probably already sick there, but we are the epicenter. But we were like having people use hand sanitizer. We were like, you know, really implementing the distancing during our meet and greet. You know, we took as many precautions as we could to try to not let like sort of what was happening, because it was really scary at the beginning of March with Corona. We just had fear, no information. And so we tried our best to like really relax people and get them into like, let's just celebrate these Black queens. And they did it. Yeah.
Now, Peppermint, since Drag Race, the world is your stage, but do you still have a New York City home bar?
I probably shouldn't say no, because then like no one will want to hire me. I don't necessarily have if a home bar is where you are working frequently during the week and kind of your main source of performance and income, then no, I don't have a home bar right now. I don't know what the world is going to be like when we emerge with our beards and all, and everything, but I'm hoping that I'll be able to kind of pick up where we left off with Nubia, with my own personal tour. There's also a speaking tour that Sasha Velour and I have been planning for years, and we're finally started to get the ball rolling on that. And then this happened. And so there's a lot of other things that I wanted to do, but my home bar has always jumped around, but at times it's been therapy, it's been Barracuda. For a while it was Opaline. You know, it's changed.
You had like 10 home bars at once at the height of before.
None of them knew.
You were everywhere. Listen, welcome to my home bar. I gotta go to my next home bar in 10 minutes. Gotta go. Bye, everyone.
Yeah.
Were you keeping yourself busy online? You and Miss Tina Burner are doing a Drag Race review series.
It's true, darling. We're having so much fun doing this series. We recently changed our format, because before we were basically flip-flopping. And I would do the beginning, she would do the end. And now we have switched it, just during the quarantine, switched it to more of a live format, kind of similar to this, where we're split screen and we're just talking about it back and forth to each other, which is even more fun because that bitch is crazy. But it's good to be able to watch Drag Race with a critical eye and feel like, you know, I have an excuse to be a little bit like bitchy about some of the queens, you know, opinionated.
Right. Now, other than Tina Burner, who are some of the New York City girls that you have your eye on that you think are coming up?
There's a few. I mean, like, even right now, I'm a little bit out of the loop. I'm sad to say, but the queens that I think were really emerging and really have already cemented themselves, in the same way that a lot of the queens that we've all fallen in love with, Bob, Bianca, Sasha Velour, a lot of those queens made a name for themselves here in New York City before even, like, independent of Drag Race. And so there's several of those queens. I have to say one of the top ones right now is Pixie Aventura, Keisha Carr, who goes by the Bearded Bitch on her socials.
Okay.
Someone who I love, who I think is just the ultimate kook, is, and I say that with the best of intentions, Bootsy LaFerris. She's just like deranged, but I love it. She's like everything like weird and stupid about drag that I absolutely love. And so I think she's great. She's got a great personality. And so those are my main three that I'm, you know, have been kind of paying attention to lately.
Now, what are you binging at home? Is there anything? What are you're like, you can only do so many digital drag shows and so many
Uh-huh.
reviews and so many albums. What are you binging?
Well, okay, so I would, okay, here's some tea. I would be binging Ozark, which I mean, I'm a little bit late because it came out during my season. But I started to get into it. And then I realized that Jason Bateman, who is I think the show's director and one of the at least producers and the star, who's a longtime actor, everybody knows Jason Bateman, said some really kind of shady things about one of my close friends, Trace Lysette, in the midst of the Jeffrey Tambor scandal. And so, Jeffrey Tambor was accused, and rightfully so, in my opinion, of sexual misconduct and sexual harassment on the set of Transparent. And so initially, in the first wave of things, a lot of the people that were involved, some of the people at the upper levels, were not really defending any of the accusers, or they were kind of speaking out against these accusers, which were just in basically a couple of trans women. And I guess for some reason, one reason or another, there just was no reason to believe them, even in the light of like 3 years ago, we should believe women. And so for some reason, these trans women were not included in that. And so I just wanted to say that publicly. Jason Bateman, he had a moment where he was sort of mansplaining in an interview and with one of his coworkers, and that got some kind of press and play. But him basically saying that Trace Lysette was probably lying and not even to be believed was I don't know. So anyway, so Ozark is off my list. It's a shame because it was well written and there's some great performances on there. Come on,
Too
Jason.
bad we'll never see how it ends, Jason Bateman. Thanks
Hello.
for nothing, Jason. Now, during the time
I've been watching. I want to tell you what I have been watching is Little Fires Everywhere with Kerry Washington and Reese Witherspoon. It's been really good.
Now, during the time of Corona, trans women are some of our most vulnerable people in our society, and during Corona, they're even more vulnerable. What, as an activist, because you've used your voice and your platform to really educate a lot of people, what should people be thinking and hoping for in supporting our trans brothers and sisters during this period of COVID?
I think one of the things that's really important for people to realize is that, like, some people's lifestyles have dramatically changed. Most people's lifestyles have dramatically changed. Everyone's been affected by COVID in one way or another, either economically or socially. But one of the things that's really interesting is that there's a lot of people who are engaged in survival sex work who I think, and I don't really know, but I would imagine that even in the light of the coronavirus, there's still people who are in practicing and engaging in survival sex work despite the social distancing measures and sort of the safety things that have been put in place. And so I think there's a lot of, certainly there's definitely a lot of trans people and trans women and trans men who are involved in sex work professionally and who may or may not see there being any other options, especially now. None of us can go to work at the department store. Many of us are not receiving the type of assistance, like where's this check? Like no one's getting the help. And so I think that there's, when we look at that, the safety of these individuals is put doubly at risk because now that they're, now not only could there be potentially a violent or shady sort of incident, now their health is at possible in jeopardy. But I think some people are just kind of saying, I'll deal with what I can. And so engaging with groups that are specifically designed to help the sort of day-to-day life of trans individuals in this way is really important. Making sure that they get food, making sure that they get attention, and making sure that they know that they're not really in the shadows. There are some organizations that will help with that. I would say National Center for Trans Equality is a place where people should go to just to kind of look for general resources. But then you can also start with something even more kind of mainstream, like Glad, who right now during Corona is funneling a lot of attention and funds to sort of secondary organizations that are directly dealing with this.
Yeah, because we got to be here for our entire community. We got to be there for every letter of the LGBTQIAA plus, right? That's right, Peppermint. Sign it. It's important for us to come together. Pep, you have a new album that you're working on. Your new single is out. What you're looking for? Is that what it's called?
That's what it's called. That's what you're looking for, honey.
Sweetie, it's so smooth. It is a smooth jam.
Thank you. It was produced by Leanne Lefembear Mitchell, who's a fabulous, really talented trans writer and producer and vocalist in her own right. And I wanted to branch out a little bit. Of course, I'm working with some of the producers that we all know and love, Corey Tutt and of course Adam Joseph. And they're the main producers that I've been working with on this album, but I did branch out a little bit. So that lead single is will be on the album. The album's not finished yet. I had to kind of stop during Corona and wasn't quite sure how we would work this out. Now, luckily, most of the stuff has been written and like recorded, but you know, the boring part of the music industry, or at least making a record, is you have to kind of sit on it and go back in and fine tune little things.
Right.
And so I'm in that process right now. I've had to set up a little recording studio in my home. And that's where I'm doing a lot of
Miss Ross.
Hello, darling. I ain't leaving the house out then. Except for French bread pizza, which I've fallen back in love with French bread pizza. I don't know. It's been like years, darling, since I'd had a French bread pizza. And darling, French bread pizza is it. Okay, that's all I gotta say.
Crunch.
So the album should be coming out this spring. I'm actually doing a little preview of some of the material in some of the digital drag shows that I do here and there. I'm, of course, doing the single. I performed it for the Stonewall Gives Back fundraiser. And the rest of the material will be available for preview at my next show, which will be a part of the Digital Drag Fest series. They're highlighting original singer and songwriter kind of folk. So I'll be involved in that in late May.
All right. Now, Drag Race Season 12 is in full steam ahead. First of all, what did you think of the whole Sherry Pie situation? Did you know Sherry Pie? Were you gagged?
Yes, I know Sherry Pie, living here in New York. We're not very close friends. I was pretty much already on my way to Drag Race and that whole kind of situation when she was really kind of emerging in the scene. And so I do know her. I think her contribution to drag alone, in terms of her makeup and her hair, some of her costuming choices and things like that are well thought out. Even her stage performances are well done. They're very entertaining. And she's obviously a very big contender would have been a very big contender for the crown, just looking at the competition alone. I think that World of Wonder and VH1 really made the right choice when it comes to obviously disqualifying her from the competition and even editing her out a bit. I think that some of the edits that they've done, for those that have been watching the season in real time, some of the edits early on were a little clunky for me. I was like, wait a minute, who said what? What?
Right.
Who's who? Yeah, like, yeah, that was a little awkward, but I think that they've gotten a little smoother. And I think they've struck a good balance, knowing that, okay, this is how many people were in the room during a conversation. We need to hear what was said or what they wore, so we'll understand what's happening. But they've done a good job of effectively removing her out and making her a non-issue. I do think that it would be great to see sort of them get in front of this in a way that allows for a conversation to take place. I don't know if that would involve Sherry or her victims. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying just the subject in general. And it, because what they've done was very reactionary, and I think it was needed to be done. But I would like to see a moment for a conversation, whether it's at the reunion. Maybe they're like, this week we are not airing Drag Race. We're going to sit down and talk about this. I think that would be something that would be beneficial because, on one hand, some people say catfishing is just, being just slightly dishonest on dating sites. But when it gets to the level of someone having several victims who, are potentially permanently scarred or affected by this, then I think that's something that needs to be talked about. And I think in the queer community and in the gay community, when it comes to sex, different types of abuse, different types of everything from misogyny to sexism to different types of physical abuse, partnered abuse, domestic abuse, sexual abuse, and even substance abuse are things that are kind of just viewed as not quite so harmful and just par for the course, but I think that they are kind of damaging. And so I would like to see them do that, but I do think that they handled it well. And this is a very talented season of girls, crop of girls. I do feel for the girls because this has affected them in a way that none of them expected. And it also had, and then now we have Corona, which has effectively stopped them from being able to go out and earn money and tour the way that they deserve to do to recoup some of that investment. But it's a really entertaining group.
Because the investment this season was huge. They had to do like 10 looks in one episode. They needed these gigs to make up that money.
I'm gagging. Like, so many looks in one episode. They've already, I think, reached the point of more than twice as many costumes and supplies that I would have had to bring for my season. And we brought a lot. I mean, 5 suitcases. I was squeezing everything into that suitcase, and I was way over the limit, the weight limit for the flights. And so, yeah, these girls have really risen to the occasion. Each year, they turn it up. The producers of the show turn up the notch on the, I think, the expectations and the fashions and the things like that. And these girls are rising to the occasion. They're really exceeding expectations.
Now, you famously did a very beautiful Madonna / Marilyn when you on your season. Diamonds were a girl's best friend, Material Girl. What did you think of the Rusical this year?
Did you hear that? Oh, something. I think the Rusical was really, really good. The fact that this was probably one of my favorite episodes of the season. And maybe even of all time. It's definitely in the top 20 of my favorite episodes. Having them do Madonna, pay homage to Madonna in a different way is great, because if they had done another Night of 1,000 Madonnas on the runway, it would have just been like, oh my word. So I think that this is a good way they do it frequently, almost every year, at least for the past few years. And so for them to do it as a Rusical, I think was really good. I would have liked to have seen a little more story, because Madonna has so much story and grit and moment. I would have liked to see a little more story weaved into the body of the show. I feel like it seems like it was a little soon maybe it's because the personalities are really big. I don't know, but it seemed like it was really soon in the season to do that Rusical, because it was like 5 hours long. It felt so long to me. Right. I was like, oh my word, or do the song shorter or something. But nevertheless, the girls really killed, and I have to give a special mention to Jan Sport, just Jan, or Jan, or whatever the names on this season. Nobody can get it right.
They're not allowed to say their names because they're corporate trademarks.
That's how you know the show might be getting ready to jump the shark, if the girls are coming onto the show with names that are already corporate trademarked. Mm.
All right, Peppermint, we have some questions from our patrons. Anyone who's joined our Patreon at the $10 level can not only join in the conversation here live on YouTube, but they can ask questions of our queens. And Peppermint, we have a bunch of questions for you.
Oh my.
Question number 1 from RJ Williams. He says, OMG, I got to see Peppermint in her SF run of Head Over Heels. I want to know, what would be her dream role for the stage? Dina from Dreamgirls, maybe?
Yeah, actually, I'll take that. Dreamgirls, if I could lip sync, then it would be great. I don't know if they would have to lower that the entire show like 25 registers, but I would take Dina any day.
Great, you can be Dina, and I'll lower Effie even lower.
Yeah.
I'll be like, and Robert Cunningham wants to know, this is a very specific question, if you went to beauty school in New York, because he thinks he was the first white boy you ever painted. That's your quote. LIBS in Midtown, ring a bell?
I know Long Island Beauty School. I was not an attendee of Long Island Beauty School, Robert. So I may have painted you, but it wasn't at beauty school. Although I've always fantasized about being a beauty school dropout.
Oh, yes. Now and Eric has a question about how drag has changed for you from when you first started to where you are today. How do you think drag has changed?
I think drag has changed in general. I think people are starting to, it's much more mainstream. So more people can say that they've been, in the past few years, since Drag Race kind of exploded the way that it has, more people can certainly say that they've been to a drag show, that they've gone and seen drag queens live and in person. And I think that folks are starting to be able to see, especially with things like Dragula, that there's different types of drag that are all very valid. And I think that kind of the idea of drag has gone through this sort of cycle for a lot of people, some faster than others. And for me, drag has gone from sort of a job that I had to an absolute career and a platform that allows me to connect with people and places and organizations that I never thought that I would.
Yeah. All right. Now we have a few questions live from our YouTube right now. Cody Gantert asks, what was the grungiest club you ever partied at in NYC? And if you could open your own, where would you want it to be located? I think I know what the grungiest club you were at in New York City was.
Yeah, I'd have to say there's several that are on that grungy list. And if they weren't, we were certainly doing some grungy ass things up in there, even if it looked as bougie as hell. There was always something grungy going on in the corner. Yeah. However, I would say the clubs and the clubs and parties that I came into that I was like, that I even I clutched my pearls, were definitely, I would say, honestly, anything that Michael T was at. So there was a club downtown that we all worked at called Opaline in the East Village, and the night that I worked was called Rated X, the Panty Party, and we had people doing an underwear kind of striptease show, but it would always get out of hand. There was always nudity, sexual acts, and even insertion with things taking place. And so that's when I knew, I was like, this is definitely a club that I would never want my mom or maybe even possibly future employers to know that I worked at. But I mean, of course, it was one of the best times of my life. Yeah. And if I could open up a club, I guess I would open up a club. I wouldn't do it in New York City, to be honest with you, but I would follow, the path of Michael Alec, only one of the paths, not all of the paths, and go out to take New York City experience out to the middle of, middle America somewhere and try to bring them 90s New York,
Yes, honey, count me in when you do that. That sounds good. Last but not least, Sarah Decker says, you are my all-time favorite. Can you tell us or show us one thing on your nightstand? Sarah, you're very intrusive.
You are intrusive. Hold on, let me get one thing. Sarah, you bitch. I'll get it for you.
Sarah, this is your lucky day. Peppermint got up, went to her nightstand, sweetie. This is not normal.
You little bitch. I know. First thing I'm going to show you, I always do a little bit of everything. This is an award that I got. It's the Stonewall Visionary Award that I got in 2017. It's very special to me. Wow. It's also a weapon.
Oh, bam!
And this is one of my prayer candles. I don't really pray. I'm not very religious. But if I were going to be religious to any being, then this would certainly be the one. It's the purple one, Prince prayer candle.
Bless us all. Ow! Ow! Peppermint, thank you so much for joining us today, sweetie. Stay safe. We love you.
I love you too. Thank you so much.
Everybody make sure to check out Peppermint's new single, What You Looking For. Look out for the Nubia tour when it returns, once we're all out of the house. And keep up with her with Tina Burner online in their Drag Race review, because you know Miss Peppermint's always bringing you the sass. We hope that all of you are safe. We love you. And from Hey Queen to you, stay safe, and we'll see you soon. Bye, Queens.